I am sure many of us have seen the Indiana Jones series of movies, which was immortalized by Harrison Ford, playing the lead character of a handsome, adventurous archaeologist who risks his life in his search for some historical items that we have only heard about in books. Over the years, 4 movies were made where Indiana goes all across the globe to unearth some of the ancient mythical stuff like Noah's Ark or the Holy Grail. Well, real-life archaeologists are anything but Indiana Jones, and their lives are much more staid and studious than Indiana's, except when they make the kind of discoveries that we are about to discuss. So without further ado, let's get into the 7 most shocking archaeological discoveries. A mummy discovered in 1886 is referred to as the Screaming Mummy, clearly because of his pained facial expression. This mummy has baffled researchers since its discovery. Bob Breyer, an archaeologist with the University of Long Island, New York, says that 2 forces were working on him, one to get rid of him and the other to preserve his remains. Several archaeologists have various theories as to whether he was buried alive or poisoned or simply executed and mummified. Recent examination has resulted in a story being pieced together to explain this rather strange mummy. Documents from the 12th century indicate that one of the wives of Pharaoh Ramses III was charged with a plot to murder him and anoint her son Pentaweret in his place. The theory is that Pentaweret was subject to this ignoble death, and his body was mummified in sheepskin, which is considered as unclean in Egyptian custom, indicating that he was responsible for something bad. Archaeologists insist that this theory remains speculation and is not proven beyond doubt. In June 2009, a mass grave with decapitated skeletons of 51 young males, with their heads neatly stacked nearby, was discovered near the town of Weymouth in the UK. In March 2010, archaeologists confirmed that they were brutally slain Vikings. It was estimated to be sometime between 910 to 1030 AD, a period when the English often fought and lost battles against the Viking invaders. Analysis of the teeth of some of them indicated them to be of Scandinavian origin. Many of the skeletons had deep cut marks on the skull, jaw, and neck, suggesting that the men were captives whose heads were savagely severed. Unusually, no trace of clothing was found, indicating the men were buried naked. What fascinated archaeologists was that normally, the Vikings were notorious for their ransacking, pillaging, and brutal murder, but for once, they seem to have become victims of the Anglo-Saxons. 3 decades ago, a team of archaeologists were carrying out an expedition in a large cave on Mount Owen in New Zealand, when they stumbled upon a frighteningly large object. It was a gigantic, dinosaur-like claw, with its flesh and scaly skin intact. It seemed that the animal had died fairly recently. Further analysis gave astounding information. The mysterious claw was that of a 3,300-year-old mummified remains of an upland moa. The moa is a prehistoric bird that went extinct centuries earlier. Apparently, the upland moa was a species that was endemic to New Zealand. While some subspecies of moa can be really big, going up to 10 feet in height, the upland moa was one of the relatively smaller ones, with its height being around 4.2 feet. It was a flightless bird and had feathers, but no wings. With claws like these, that would have made the velociraptor jealous. It remains a mystery as to how it went extinct so early. In 2009, archaeologists were excavating the bottom of a prehistoric dry lake bed in Motala, Sweden, when they stumbled upon the foundations of a mysterious stone structure. Further excavation discovered mystery structures, stone tools, animal remains, and 8,000-year-old skulls of 10 people ranging from children to the elderly. An 11th skull was found buried deep in the lake bottom, which had fragments of one of the other skulls in its cranium. More intriguingly, 2 of the skulls were pierced with wooden stakes. Archaeologists speculated that this perhaps was the custom of the natives in those days for burial of their loved ones, where the skulls were removed after the body decomposed and mounted on stakes. Another theory is that these were enemy captives who were tortured and brutally killed. A group of archaeologists excavating a sewer underneath a Roman Byzantine bathhouse in Ashkelon, Israel in 1988 realized, to their horror, that they were in a specially designed sewer to dispose off corpses of newborn babies. The 100-odd babies whose remains were discovered appear to have died soon after birth, possibly victims of infanticide. Jill Ayers, director at Chiltern Archaeology in England, suspects a brothel was to blame for these dead children. With no contraception available to the Romans, who perhaps didn't find infanticide such a big deal in those times, simply murdered the children as soon as they were born and disposed of the bodies in the sewer. Measurement of the bones corroborates this, as all babies died at around 40 weeks gestation. Perhaps we live in a much gentler time than some of our predecessors. In 1933, archaeologist Robert de Menzel was conducting a dig in the area of Dura Europos, where ancient Persians laid siege to their longtime enemies, the Romans. During the excavation, de Menzel found several tunnels, which was pretty much par for the course in a siege situation. What was out of the ordinary was that there was a haphazard pile of 19 Roman skeletons in one of the tunnels, along with a solitary Persian soldier's remains at the other end of the tunnel. It appeared as if the Romans were fleeing something very frightening. Strangely, there were traces of sulfur and bitumen all over the walls of the tunnel. An investigation by archaeologist Simon James indicate perhaps the earliest use of chemical warfare. The reconstructed story goes like this. The Romans heard the Persians working in tunnels and decided to surprise them. However, the Persians also heard the Romans coming and laid a trap for them. They lit a fire in their own tunnel, and as they were leaving, threw sulfur and bitumen into the flames. The Romans met with choking gas, which turned into sulfuric acid in their lungs. The lost city of Atlantis is probably the most sensational archaeological discovery of all time. In 360 BC, Plato came up with the theory that the Atlantis city sank in the ocean. According to researchers, a strong tsunami hit the city in the 10th millennium BC, which probably sank it. In 2014, archaeologists from University of Geneva were doing dive training exercises off Kyllata Bay, Greece, when they happened to spot intriguing pottery submerged near the shore. After a full investigation, a sprawling city dating back to 2500 BC was discovered underwater. Several buildings were seen in the massive ruins that stretched over 12 acres, which is equivalent to 10 football fields. The style of construction appeared to match that of the Bronze Age civilization in Greece. 3 horseshoe-shaped foundations attached to a wall line were also discovered, which archaeologists believe were defensive fortifications. Archaeologists also found paved surfaces that appear to be streets, as well as a wide array of pottery and stone tools. Now, there is a lot of debate on whether the city discovered was the Atlantis that Plato was referring to. Archaeologists studying this discovery are not claiming that it is the mythical Atlantis that philosophers and historians have been looking for over 2,000 years. Nevertheless, it remains an archaeologist's paradise with over 6,000 items to study. I hope you enjoyed the video and found it informative. If you did, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel as well. I will see you soon. And yes, thanks for watching.